Ya está avanzando tan rápido que los límites ya no son tecnológicos, sino de nuestra imaginación. Y estoy muy contento de presentarles a Andrew Hessel para que nos ayude a empujar nuestra imaginación. Andrew fue mi profesor en Singularity University y una de las personas que me inspiró a meterme en el mundo de biotecnología. Es fundador de Human Genomics y del Genome Project Right, que es un consorcio que busca en la siguiente década escribir un genoma humano que sea completamente inmune a todos los virus que existen. Andrew, welcome to Ciudad de las Ideas. Hello, Mexico!
It's such a pleasure to be here. I just want to thank you for coming, the organizers for putting this on, and for the invitation for me to come. Thank you. I am a really, really strange guy. I work at the intersection of digital technologies and life science. It's been a fascinating journey for me, and I try and inspire others to find their path through digital technologies and bioscience by sharing some of the stories of my life. So I just want to say right from the start, please look at me as an ambassador, not necessarily a scientist, not necessarily a businessman. I work at the intersection of these three areas: technology, all technology, including life science, business and how we grow enterprises, and stories, visions, because we need to be able to communicate and connect with the world. It's a very odd place to be because I'm not really a scientist, I'm not really a businessman, and I'm not really a storyteller. But it comes together in some pretty unique ways. Now, my burning question is, what will engineered humans look like? And I want to be clear, this is almost a taboo topic. It scares people. And this is why I want to go head on into this space with you. Now, we all know this technology. Digital technologies have invaded the world. Every area of society, every business, it's completely changed the way we live. We accept it. The cell phone, digital technologies, the idea of computation, data, and more than that, printing, turning data into real things, whether it's buildings or a 3D printed object. We're comfortable with this. But there was a digital technology that existed in a manufacturing technology before any of the stuff that we built. And it's life, and you just heard some of this with Floyd. These are living cells growing and dividing in time-lapse. And I want to be clear, this is the most advanced manufacturing technology on the planet. We have cells that are making thousands of different protein in a regulated way, copying their genomes, one becoming 2 to 4, 8, 16, it's exponential. And human cells are billions of years more evolved than the bacterial cells here, but it works on the same machinery, the same code. Nature didn't fork the code. It took Floyd and his team to generate a new code. That's something really significant. This is technology that is still attributed to gods, but we've been dissecting it at a molecular level now for almost 100 years. Of course, you go into a cell and you pull out the DNA, you can sequence it, you can read it. It's a digital code, not ones and zeros, A's, T's, GC's, and now some X and Y's. But it's a digital code. We can read it. And reading DNA has become almost a universal pastime in life science. It's how we start to understand the machinery of life from the most basic level. This really catalyzed and expanded because of the Human Genome Project. It's the biggest project that was ever done in life science. It had a $3 billion budget, a 15-year timeline. And at the end of the day, what it did was not just unlock the human genome, but the genome of every organism on the planet. And it was sold to society as the potential to diagnose any human disease. The technology didn't stop when the Human Genome Project stopped. It was largely complete by 2000, and the finishing work was done by 2003. But the technology of reading DNA kept getting better and better. It tracked alongside Moore's law for the next few years, and then suddenly we got this massive acceleration as new sequencing technology was developed. We've never had a technology grow this quickly. It's really strange. But the reason why it outpaced Moore's law is because it's a universal code. And as people came on board and engineers came on board, it was this massive concentration of human creativity and engineering working to solve one problem. How do we read DNA faster? I've been obsessed by this chart. It shows the falling cost of DNA, but the growing value of the information we can get out of DNA. And that's just accelerated. Now we've passed an economic inflection point where by reading a human genome, we can get more value out of it than the cost of getting it. And just before I came here to Mexico, this company took the covers off. I advised them. It was founded by George Church and a couple of 20-year-old entrepreneurs. It's called Nebula, and what it basically does is make human genome sequencing free. You get to own your genome. It connects you to payers that will pay to read your genome just for the privilege of looking at it, and you get to keep all the data. So not only is reading a human genome free today, you can get paid. This opens up the potential to unlock all of humanity's treasures. We're all different. We all have a unique genome. And as we start to collect this information and analyze our millions, if not billions of genomes, our knowledge of life science explodes. And more than that, it's not just reading the human genome that's important. It's reading all genomes. You heard about microbial genome sequencing and prospecting. Well, this project caught my eye just a month ago. It actually wants to sequence every eukaryotic organism on the planet. That's every animal and every plant over the next 10 years because this technology has just become so cheap. This is a revolution. When will we sequence the last organism on Earth? It'll be this century. But writing DNA is even more powerful. That's when we start to engineer. That's when we start to create. This is Emily Laprouche. She's the CEO of a company called Twist Biosciences. They write DNA as a service. They IPO'd on Halloween. It's a remarkable deal. You can literally 3D print the DNA molecule now. And other companies are coming in to make even more powerful technologies all the time. This is just one based out of France that is now using enzymes, the same machinery that's in our cells to write DNA. This changes everything, because just as Google was founded in a garage in the 1990s, now we can get biotech into the hands of almost everyone because you can write DNA digitally. All you need is a laptop. We're starting to see literally grade school bioengineering kits be sold. This is a company called Amino Lab, started by some friends of mine, and it comes with a handbook on how to do this. It's made for kids. We've seen thousands, almost 40,000 students go through an international program to learn how to program living cells. This is called the iGEM program. This was just a few weeks ago in Boston as they came together to share their work. It's spawned new biotech companies like Ginkgo Bioworks that design and build organisms to make high-value compounds. And also Zymergen, which is using the same technology to make thousands of new biomaterials. This isn't life science working at a bench. This is life science done by robots at an incredible scale and pace. But my interest is synthetic viruses, whole genomes. I want to be able to write entire genomes. The first one was done in 2002. Since then, only about 30 synthetic viruses have been made. I've been using this technology, making viruses that hunt down and kill cancer cells. It's a remarkable idea. We catch the flu, we get sick. If we design the virus, we can make only the cancer cells get sick. And it's also teaching us how we're going to defend ourselves against viruses, both natural and designed. This is a really powerful technology that is essentially design and build of the simplest living organisms. It offers the potential to make truly personalized medicines, because how much did your last cold cost you? A viral genome is incredibly small and easy to write today. We're moving beyond that. Craig Venter and his team in 2010 made the first designer bacterial cell. This isn't a synthetic cell in the sense that all the machinery and the code is natural, but it's simply, you just write the genome. And at the forefront of this, we're writing yeast genomes. This is the same yeast you use for bread and beer. This work will be wrapped up shortly, and it's important because yeast are closer to you and me than their bacterial cousins. Now, if you're writing DNA, the more you write, the more complex it gets. Today, writing proteins and viruses is fairly straightforward, or adding a metabolic circuit to a cell. If you're really well-funded, your company or your organization, you can start to think about making whole bacteria or yeast. But this work, being able to make large chromosomes of plants and animals, or potentially humans, that's still science fiction, that's the future, but it's coming extremely fast. This is why I had the pleasure of pulling together an incredible group of scientists over the last few years to make a new genome project. This time, not to read the human genome, but to learn how to write it. And not just the human genome, every large genome. We're doing this because we need to create a landing pad for this technology in society, because it's almost here. We need to understand the IP, the ethics. The ethics are extremely important, but also build open tools and technologies so it's not just the domain of a single company. GP Write in the last few years is a bottom-up project, and it's grown now to have over 1,000 participants and 100 different organizations from around the world, and I invite you to be a part of it. It's an open project for everyone. Now, the Genome Project Write was immediately, we were accused that we were going to make designer babies. Absolutely not true. We're not. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be able to write large genomes. But I want to be clear, we're getting to the point where we will be designing our babies and other life forms, because the tools are coming. This is IVF, in vitro fertilization. It has given rise to over 8 million babies since the first one was done. Here, a micropipette injects an egg and puts in a single sperm. You can think of this as porn for cell biologists. The first test tube baby, so to speak, was born over 40 years ago in July of 1978. The technology was accepted because at the end of the day, you just make babies, and babies we accept. This is one of my babies, Rosalind. I don't know which embryo made her, but she turned out pretty well. This is my son, Darwin. He's 1 year old last week. He was riding the forward edge of this technology. He was completely genetically profiled before implantation. And he's just the start of a wave of other humans. Because now we have things like CRISPR and genetic surgery, being able to repair genetic damage in a cell right there in the fertility clinic. We're also learning how to do cell biology and take stem cells from our bodies and make eggs. We've done it with mice. People are trying to do this for human. And the ramifications here are significant, because what it means is that IVF won't be an expensive procedure anymore. It'll be $500. And you can have as many eggs as you want. And of course, we're moving to a time in the very near future probably within a decade, when we'll have the capabilities of synthesizing whole human genomes. This is incredible. Programming life is arguably the most powerful technology humanity has ever created. It really has the potential to change our entire world. I don't want to oversell this. This is a living world. This technology will help us live in more dense urban settings because it will literally allow us to grow things that we need. It'll help us clean up a world that is becoming increasingly polluted with older technologies. It'll help us grow the food we need to feed 10 billion or maybe even 100 billion people. And it will certainly help us take care of the babies, the 90 million or so that are born every single year. Some believe it'll even help us get into space because, of course, if we go to space, we're subjected to a really extreme environment. How do we re-engineer ourselves to better adapt to that environment? Or maybe even on Mars. All I know is the ability to program human life is coming not just to a select few, but to everyone. And that means we're going to have an incredible diversity of humanity springing forth in this century. Darwin is an amazing scientist. He taught us so much about evolution. But I want to be clear, we've moved past Darwin. We're moving into an age of intention where we need to have more empathy for humanity than ever before. It's uncharted waters. It's not just going to be done by a select few. It's our responsibility as a species to understand this and do it right. Just know that there's no way to stop it because even evolution appears to evolve. There's never been a better time to really start doing this. We're connected as a species now through our digital technologies. This will bring us forward into a future that is unimaginable. Thank you.
Hay dos revoluciones que me apasionan. La revolución de la inteligencia artificial y la revolución de la biotecnología. Especialmente en el tema de biotecnología, hay un tema que me ha causado mucha curiosidad y sorpresa en los últimos meses, que es el futuro de la reproducción. Hace muchos años ya tenemos la píldora y otros anticonceptivos, y ahora es cada vez más común, como estamos viendo, la fertilización in vitro. Y nos preguntamos, ¿cuál es el futuro de la reproducción? Con esta pregunta, la organización Next Nature, que se está haciendo, está analizando cuáles son las implicaciones de tener un vientre artificial. ¿Qué significa tener un vientre artificial para el tema de intimidad, para temas de equidad de género, para temas de entendernos nosotros mismos como humanos? Y en esta sección es donde les quiero presentar a Hendrik Jan, en donde no nada más está explorando este tema, pero está empujando el debate para que nos hagamos estas preguntas el día de hoy y entendamos como humanidad qué hacer con estas tecnologías y cómo poder asegurar que estas tecnologías realmente van a tener un impacto positivo en nuestras vidas. Welcome, Hendrik Jan. It's a pleasure having you in Mexico.
Hola, Puebla. How will we make babies in the future? Humans are a storytelling species. We use images to tell stories about who we are, how we see ourselves, and how we look at ourselves in our place on this planet and in the universe. We use images to do so. We are a mythological species. We are a myth-making species. And some of these myths are sustained also in popular culture, including myths around fertility, childbirth, pregnancy. But I sometimes believe that we also live in an area where we believe in different types of myths. For instance, technology is one of those myths. And the idea, the belief that we can just make everything, we can solve any problem, we can end suffering. I think that's one of the mythologies of our time. But I like to see technology a little bit different. I sometimes think that technology is the ultimate self-portrait of humanity. Now the question is, do we still recognize ourselves in this image? I, as a designer, I'm extremely interested in how new technologies will change the way we tell stories about ourselves. And I want to share a movie that shows an example of one of those technologies. It aired about a year ago on April 25th, 2017. It was a video made by the Philadelphia Children's Hospital. What we're looking at here is a lamb fetus in a plastic bag, connected to tubes that feed the lamb nutrition, oxygen, and it contains an amniotic fluid in which the fetus lives. Now, always when I show this image in lectures and workshops, people have very strong responses to it. I don't know how that's with you. People roughly fall into two categories. The first says like, oh, this is ugly, take it away, I can't see it. The other half is like, this is also very interesting because I'm looking at something very essential, life coming into being, and it's now becoming transparent. It shows me a new perspective, almost like the first astronauts that went into space and saw the Earth from a perspective that nobody had seen before. So I decided to do a little bit of research. And I found out that the idea of having a pregnancy outside the body is already almost 100 years old. The term ectogenesis means birth outside an organism's body, was coined by biologist J.B.S. Haldane in 1924. And he was very good friends with Aldous Huxley, the writer of the famous science fiction novel Brave New World that features humans bred in glass bottles. A bit dystopian scenario. I also found out that an artificial womb was already patented in 1955. It's quite long ago. And if we simplify this drawing a little bit, what do we have? A container that contains amniotic fluid in which the fetus lives. Nutrition and oxygen have to go in on one side, and waste has to go out on the other side. Plus, of course, we need some kind of interface to control all this, and of course, that's the designer's job. Now, how should we understand this technology? One way is to look at already existing reproductive technologies, such as contraceptives. Early in the 20th century, they disconnected sex from reproduction. Technologies such as artificial womb might go even further and also disconnect reproduction from the body. So on one hand, we see a continuation of a process that we've already started. On the other hand, it's also a very disruptive idea, and the disruption of many things that we think are natural, normal, humane, desirable even. So, yeah, is this a direction where we should even want to proceed as humanity? Of course, there's a lot of things to be said here. Apart from all the technicalities that it's extremely difficult to connect a living organism to a machine, there's also a lot of ethical questions that, of course, are raised to this. What happens to the concept of bodily integrity when a child is no longer in your body but outside it? What about the bond between mother and child? Those kind of questions immediately come up. On the other hand, there are also scientists and doctors that believe that this technology could save the lives of thousands, if not millions, of premature infants. And I'm working with a hospital in the Netherlands that are setting the first steps in building an artificial womb. And they say that every day that you can keep a premature infant in a fluid will dramatically increase their chances of survival. And also dramatically decrease the chances of heart diseases, lung diseases, etc. But then, of course, there's another argument. I think there's a huge opportunity to research this and to maybe learn something about what it means to be human. And maybe it's something that we've done all the time as mankind. So once again, technology also here in this field will be a driver of cultural change. And as we've learned from the previous presentation, this is not new. We've been doing it for years. The alchemists, they tried to conceive human life in a glass flask. The first baby incubators looked more like steam engines. Look at what they are now. We've learned to control hormonal cycles in our bodies. And yes, Louise Brown, the first IVF baby, has turned 40 this summer, and millions of babies after have been put on Earth. But this is the past. And if we look at technologies that are now emerging on the horizon, we've just learned a few, what picture emerges? There's the idea of cell regeneration, making cells live longer, which dramatically increases, our age, but also the window of opportunity to become pregnant, for instance. And there's more. Reprogramming our skin cells into sperm and eggs, reprogramming our genetic codes. But it's not all technology. We're also talking about new lifestyles. We see patchwork families coming up, new relationship styles, polyamory, people having relationships with more than one person. Might sound a bit exotic, but it's happening. It's a reality for some. So, the sum of all this, where might this lead to? Are we going to some kind of dark science fiction future where humans lay kind of glowing eggs in dark spaceships? I'm not sure if that's a very desirable future. So maybe we should consider some alternatives. I think the question is, or it starts with, in which kind of society would we want to live? And I want to do a little thought experiment with you. Now, if you would consider that you are born again on this planet, but you don't know if you're going to be born man or woman, would you be born rather in society A, where half of the population bears all the risks, burdens and privileges that come with the production of a new generation? And of course, every organism needs a new generation. It's kind of a collective thing. Or would you rather be born in society B, where we have optimized reproductive technology and routinely use it, and all the risks and burdens, but also the privilege, have been distributed a little bit more evenly among everyone involved? So that's a thought experiment you can do with yourself. Now, I think society A, we more or less know already how that looks like. It's society where we live in. Society B, for me, is one big question mark, because I don't know how that looks like. That's why I'm a designer. I use design to envision these kind of scenarios, not so much to predict the future, but to explore those futures. And I would like to invite you to come with me to explore Reproductopia, an imaginary country where the inhabitants might have very different ideas about making babies, experiencing intimacy, building families and relationships. The technologies that they will use might be very well integrated in their homes, almost like some kind of IKEA design. We will see probably new interactions between man and machine, but maybe perhaps also a whole new role for the fathers in this whole process. We might see even male pregnancies, a gay couple having a genetically identical child by themselves without the help of any surrogate mothers. And yes, maybe you will also see designer babies. How will they look like? Will they have some kind of other physical traits like gills, like fish, or where do we draw the line? Where do we stop? And we could even go to very extreme scenarios, like the artist Ai Hasegawa from Japan, who said to herself, well, I might put another human on this planet, but I could also lend my reproductive abilities to helping an endangered species. And of course, this is an art project. It's meant to provoke. Right? It projects an idea that we can respond to. But it asks also a question to us, how far do we want to go in this field? What is possible and what is preferable? And what are these stories that we tell ourselves? So I'd like to come back to this image, but maybe reframe it a little bit. Because we could ask ourselves, if birds lay eggs, why should humans not do that? That's an open question. We don't have to answer it right now. I just want to provide you with 4 scenarios from nature that might guide us into how we want reproductive technologies in our lives. We know that like the bees and the flowers have co-evolved. Also humans have co-evolved with technology. So what are some options? Will we be like the kangaroos, carrying our children not so much in our bodies but close to our bodies? Will we become like the seahorses, some kind of gender-neutral species that can just harvest some skin cells and reprogram into sperm and eggs, so we technically don't need a partner anymore to reproduce? What will that do to our conception of relationships, marriage, and so on? Or will we find cultural solutions, like the penguins did, where the males breed the egg, where the females go out hunting for fish? Now, back to technology. I want to propose a model that I've developed, and it's called pyramid technology. And it shows how technology becomes nature in 7 steps. Starting at the bottom, where technology only exists as an idea, like that human egg. And you could compare this maybe to time machines. Time traveling does not exist, yet we can speak about it because it has been envisioned in novels, in movies. Artists have envisioned that, put their creativity to it. So we can, it's there as an idea. The lamp in that bio bag, it exists. It's operational, but it only exists in the laboratory. It's very far still from our daily realities. If that ever will happen, we don't know yet. It's still in that early stage. But it might be that one day it will be as accepted as, for instance, IVF. That is now, it's still expensive, it's still an invasive procedure. It's widely accepted in most parts of society. Or even like the concept of birth control, that sits really high here up the pyramid, that it's almost not recognized as technology anymore. It almost becomes invisible and becomes so ingrained with ourselves. I don't know where this technology will go to, but it might very well be that reproductive technologies, such as artificial womb, will also have their journey through the pyramid. And it's a question mark how they will look like when they reach the top of the pyramid. Because I think in the end, really sufficiently evolved technologies will become part of our human nature. Thank you very much.